This episode of Derek and Matt Love Comics recorded August 13th, 2018. You can find Derek and Matt Love Comics on Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, and TuneIn. You can email us at derekandmattlovecomics@gmail.com. Find us on facebook.com/derekandmatt, on Twitter at derekandmatt, on Instagram at derekandmatt, and now all new Derek and Matt Love Comics on YouTube. When the skies crack open, the oceans boil, the ground splits asunder, and the demons and the undead are unleashed, we'll try to keep a safe distance. This is Derek and Matt Love Comics, the podcast where two friends discuss comics and movies. I'm your tour guide on this journey through the mystical realms, Derek. And with me as always is my partner in monster slaying and ghost busting, Matt.
Sweet Tennessee whiskey, brownest of the brown liquors. What's that? You want me to drink you? But I'm doing a podcast right now. Well, maybe just a little. Oh, hey, we're here, aren't we?
Yeah, some of us a little more than others, apparently. How are you, Matt?
I don't know. It's not as hot. I mean, by like 2 degrees. So.
Yeah. It's not as bad.
I was only a little miserable instead of completely miserable.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Of course, it's going to be freezing in like a month and a half. So.
That doesn't bother me. I've never really had much of a problem with the winter. Just throw on an extra sweater, maybe get out a comforter. I'm fine. Summer, there's no way to cool down. You reach a point where you can't cool down any further, unless you have central air.
I don't know. The whiskey's working pretty good.
Well, I don't have that option, at least at the moment. But anyways, moving on to what's been going on, what have we been up to this week?
I read a bunch of comics, which is sort of. So we had this big discussion last week about how comics are the best that they've ever been, or second best that they've ever been in the time that I've been reading.
Well, they've certainly been the best that they've been in quite a while.
So of course, everything I read this week, I'm not gonna say it was mediocre, but like Amazing Spider-Man #3, they set up a bunch of story stuff. It's not bad by any means, but it was, you have to have those issues that are in between that just lay story groundwork and aren't all crazy action or great jokes.
Just a lot of spinning wheels.
Right, and it seemed like everything I read this week was that way. That was that way with Superman #2, with Catwoman #2, with Spider-Man #3. I did read the first 2 issues of Hawkman, which I hadn't touched yet. If Indiana Jones was a Hawk-themed supervillain or superhero, that's what this book would be. It's really fun.
That is exactly what I have been saying that Hawkman needs to be for years. Because I've long said that Hawkman was basically Indiana Jones crossed with Conan the Barbarian, and that DC needed to actually focus on that, but they hadn't. So, it really interests me that they are finally doing something like that.
I keep waiting for Henry Jones to say, "You call this archaeology?" Terrifics 5 and 6, really good, more Fantastic Four type stuff from DC. However, we got Fantastic Four #1 this week. And, it's kind of hard to say how this book was. I'm going to say that it was what it needed to be. It didn't completely blow me away or anything, but it was a solid story, great characterizations, and the setup for the return that we needed it to be.
I'm interested to find out the details of where everyone were. I know that the Human Torch and the Thing for a period of time were with the Guardians, correct?
Yeah, and Torch has been a hero on Earth, and they've both been teaming up in Marvel 2-in-1. So the crux.
The ones, right? I'm just sorry to interrupt, but the ones I didn't know about were Reed and Sue. I just figured they just.
Nobody knows about them.
Okay.
So the crux of this issue was basically Thing accepting that Reed and Sue are gone and deciding to move on with his life, and Johnny demanding that they can never accept that they're gone, and they can never stop looking for so we don't they're not actually back as the Fantastic Four in this issue. What's funny there is Marvel's been doing these on their first issues of these new series. They've been extra long, and they've had a backup story. Well, this had a backup story and then a backup one page with the Impossible Man, and it was the Impossible Man complaining that after 3 years we get Fantastic Four #1, and they're not actually back together. Particular funny moment of the issue is when there's a flashback to an adventure they had in space where I forget who they were dealing with, but they were told that brute force was not going to win the day, and this was a alien being of, like, it responded to harmonics, so they needed the best singer of the group to face off against it, and Sue's like, all right, I'll do it, and basically everyone goes, yeah, it's Johnny. And she's like, she looks at the kids are with them, and she looks at the kids, and they're like, she's like, but you love when I sing to you at night, when I tuck you in. And they're like, yeah, we do. It's Uncle Johnny. So, of course, that leads to the next page, Johnny with a, almost like a lounge singer type microphone, singing, Dankeschön, darling, Dankeschön, for like 2 pages. To the point where they all accept that, yes, Johnny is the superior singer, and they just want him to stop. So, yeah, it was a fun book. My surprise of the week was Unnatural. I read the first 2 issues of that. Quite frankly, I thought it was going to be a skin book. What with the Milo Manara variant cover on the first issue, and frankly, it being Italian. But it's a really interesting book about civil rights. It is about a pig girl who lives in a world of anthropomorphic animals, and apparently they have trouble maintaining a birth rate. So there's this whole government thing where you have to get married and have kids by age 26, and if you don't, then they just assign someone to you for you to have kids with, and they want you to have kids with someone of a similar species to you, because any other love would be unnatural. So there's gay rights issues that are brought up. There's basically like interracial couple type rights issues that come up. It's a really interesting like sci-fi take on a real issue, which is what I always say sci-fi should do.
Right.
It doesn't hurt that it's drawn beautifully and there's these cute girls in it. And again, the Milo Manara cover, but.
I was surprised because I had never heard of this series until this past week, whenever the variant cover by Archer
for issue 2,
Lau?
Yeah.
After Stanley Lau released that cover image, that was the first I had ever heard about this. So it's actually an Italian comic book?
I believe it's being published by Image, but I believe it was originally, I think it's actually a reprint, that this was already published in Italy. But it's I forget her name, but she's an Italian artist who's worked at DC and a couple of other indie things in America. And you would you would totally know who it is if I told you, and I can't think of what her name is.
If it's the artist I'm thinking of, didn't she work with Gail Simone?
I believe she did.
I can't think of her name.
And if you want to see any of these covers, including that great Art Germ cover, go over to our YouTube channel, because I did a video on my comics that I picked up and all that was in there. Speaking of Gail Simone, the last thing I'll talk about is I read the second issue of Plastic Man, and I didn't expect Gail Simone, who I love dearly, to be the one to sort of put the chink in my theory about comics being amazing right now, because I don't know what this book is supposed to be. It's trying to be funny, like Plastic Man should be, but it's not really funny, and it's too gritty, and I don't know when it takes place, if it's a Plastic Man year 1, or if it's current. It doesn't feel like the same character at all that is appearing in Terrifics, and the character that's in Terrifics is pretty much stock Plastic Man, what you'd expect him to be. I don't know what this book is supposed to be, and I'm not really... After 2 issues, I'm not really enjoying it. I do have issue 3 here, and I'm going to try knocking that out. And it's only a 6-issue mini, so I'm probably going to buy the whole thing. But, man, from Gail Simone, I expected a lot more than this. I did say that the first issue had some moments that I thought were funny, but I also felt like I still didn't know what the book was supposed to be at the time. So yeah, I don't know what's going on with this book, and it's a little disappointing.
You can't hit 100% all the time.
No, you can't. But like when Gale or Mark Waid or Jeff Johns or Grant Morrison writes something that I don't enjoy, it gets to me because they're the people I can count on to always write something I'm going to enjoy.
Yeah. No, I understand that. I mean, there are books that all of those writers have written that I frankly haven't enjoyed.
No, yeah, I mean, I don't like.
It's always a bit jarring. So
I don't like Johns' Year One or Earth One stuff for Batman. I don't like Mark Waid's Superman Birthright. There's books by these writers that I don't like, but by and large, they are my favorite writers, and I usually like everything they write.
The funny thing is, the stuff by Johns that I didn't like was his Justice League in the New 52, and I did not like Waid's Empire.
I never read Empire. I liked Justice League in New 52.
It's just so nihilistic. It's depressing. I couldn't find I could not find any enjoyment reading that.
This might be no, I was gonna say this might be the first thing by Gale that I didn't like, but I loved Secret Six by Gale, and when she came back and did a Secret Six book in the New 52, I'll never forget this. It was before, like maybe 6 months, a year before I started working at the store, and I knew the first issue was coming out, and I had called Greg's and said, please make sure you save me a copy of that. I'm so happy that this is coming back. And I had to go on a small trip, and I didn't want to wait, so I digitally got the issue and read it, and I literally called Greg's and said, yeah, you can go ahead and put that back on the shelf. And for a Gail Simone book of a title that she had previously done that I loved, that really hurt me.
Oh, well, the problem with that is so many of the characters in the New 52 were just completely foreign, 180 away from what they were before.
This is when they made Catman into an actual Catman. Like he was like a werecat, and it was so dumb. And Catman's a character that I've always loved, that I've always said, oh, under the right writer, he's a nobody, but under the right writer, he could be great. And that writer was Gail Simone. She made him great in the old Villains United and Secret Six books, but alas, not happening in the New 52.
Yeah, the best you could say about the New 52 was that it was hit or miss.
Oh yeah, I say that all the time. There was great stuff in the New 52. There was also stuff that was terrible.
There were. Speaking for myself, I mean, Aquaman was incredible.
Yeah, Aquaman was
I did not like the other stuff that Jeff Johns was doing at the time, but his Aquaman run was phenomenal. And then the Action Comics run with Grant Morrison was great, although the Superman run, especially whenever Scott Lobdell took over, was not the best Superman stuff I've read.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people I've heard just completely dismiss the New 52 out of hand as it was completely, everything about it was bad. And that's just being ridiculous. There were bad things, and some of the stuff that was bad tended to be slightly, I would say, I guess, over the top bad. Mm-hmm. But, for the most part, you have one of the best Batman runs ever. You had Morrison's run on Action was great. I'm gonna stand by. I really liked John's Justice League run. And yeah, his Aquaman run was great.
I need to get that on trade paperback. Just I have most of his run on Aquaman in the single issues, but man, I would love to get that on trade because it's just such good comics.
So that was my week, other than what we did together. So,
myself, I really need to start getting back to my unwatched Blu-rays and DVDs, but this past week I took a couple of excursions away from that. I think it was Tuesday morning. I don't know what it was. Woke up in the morning, I just thought, I feel like watching Rabid, the 1977 David Cronenberg horror film, which is a movie I really, really love, but I hadn't watched in a few years. So I figured, what the heck, I threw it on, ended up watching that. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie, but while I was watching it, I started just looking it up on Wikipedia, and I found out something that I was surprised by. Apparently, they're doing a remake that's filming right now as we speak this summer. I believe in Canada, and the star is Laura Vandervoort, who played
Supergirl?
Supergirl,
The terrible Supergirl?
and Indigo. She played Indigo, right, in the Supergirl TV show.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Apparently, two of the supporting actors, AJ Lee and CM Punk.
Oh, I knew they were doing a horror movie. I didn't know that's what it was.
Color me shocked. I hadn't heard that. So, I was really surprised when I saw that. No, Rabid is... It is easily my favorite David Cronenberg film. It is such a bizarre movie. If you try to explain what that movie is, you basically sound insane. It's about a woman who is in a bike accident in remote Quebec, which luckily happens just down the road from a remote clinic that does plastic surgery. So she's taken there, and the plastic surgeon, who is a revolutionary plastic surgeon, is able to repair her burns which are over her upper body and her arms and face, by using skin grafts with this strange new procedure that he created for it. So everything's fine. But she's comatose for a few weeks until she wakes up and develops a thirst for human blood. So she's essentially a vampire, but she doesn't drink blood through a normal means. Instead, she developed this orifice in her left armpit, which can best be described as looking like a female reproductive organ, from which a tentacle comes out that has a nail on the end, and that's what drains blood out of people. And the people who have the blood drained out die and basically come back as zombies. And one of the other patients in the hospital that she attacks escapes, starts spreading this plague where the zombies basically act like they're rabid, foaming at the mouth and going into like a blind rage, just becoming lunatics. And it ends up spreading to Montreal, where the entire city is put under martial law, and the Canadian military goes in, and it ends up turning into an apocalyptic film where you have this plague happening everywhere, and it becomes this really like dark and grim, because she escapes from the hospital, heads back to Montreal. Her boyfriend, who had been in the motorcycle accident with her, but he was less severely injured, is searching for her, gets back to Montreal, and whenever he drives in, one of the crazed zombie people jump on top of his car, and a military guy steps out of nowhere and just blasts him with a machine gun. And then this truck pulls up next to him, and these guys in hazmat outfits get out and start hosing chemicals all over his car, then wave him off. And don't want to spoil anything, but basically the ending of the film is just dump trucks going around with all the people in the hazmats picking up bodies off the street and throwing them in the car, in the back of the the garbage trucks. It's just, I don't know, it's this weird, independent, nasty 1977 David Cronenberg film. So it's like all body horror, and all the horror has the, like philosophical elements or sociological ones. And it stars Marilyn Chambers as the lead, who was arguably one of the most famous porn stars of 1970s, if not the most famous.
I would say probably the most famous.
Yeah, she was the Ivory Snow girl, so yeah, probably. It's just, it's a weird movie. Yeah, I can't believe they're doing a remake of that, and CM Punk and AJ Lee are in it.
Yeah, that is weird.
Although, every time I say that out loud, I just keep thinking, I kind of want to see what that's going to look like.
I mean, you shouldn't be surprised that they're remaking anything, so...
Honestly, I'm not really surprised. Anything that was remotely successful at some point is going to get a remake. For all we know, 5 years from now, they'll be doing a remake of The Brood, Cronenberg's 1979 horror film. Other than that, recently my sister and I discovered that, we have the WWE Network, and it works differently in Canada than it does in the US or basically anywhere else in the world, where you can access it online or through other modes of streaming service.
My understanding
devices.
is the way it works for you is just for your cable company in Canada, that other Canadian cable companies get it the same way we get it.
Yeah, I think you might be right. It's basically just a cable channel for me. But we found out recently that we do get the on-demand service through WWE Network. The only issue is it's not exhaustive. Like, for example, my sister for the last week has been watching basically every episode of Raw and SmackDown that they have on there, but there are gaps. You'll have 3 episodes of Raw, and then there'll be like a 2-month gap before there's another episode. So it's a little odd.
I mean, not everything is on the real network. I have never sat and binged Raws, so I don't know how extensive it is, but I know there are episodes that are missing. And I know from time to time they go, we just put up like these 100 more episodes of something. So I think they purposely at the beginning didn't release everything at once so that they would have stuff to release down the line.
I get that, and I understand that. It's just, you would think that they would, if you're going to start from the beginning with SmackDown, they have I believe my sister said that they have the first 8 episodes, and then there's nothing until episode 12. And it's just, why don't you just put the first year and just leave it at that? If you don't want to put everything out right away.
Some of it might actually be ownership issues, although those were all UPN, so I don't know why UPN would have a restraint on these 3 episodes and not the rest.
One thing that was surprising is I told my sister that she probably wouldn't be able to find episodes with Chris Benoit, but she was telling me that a bunch of the episodes that she was watching actually had matches with him.
Oh no, so on the proper network, if you go to a pay-per-view or an event or whatever, it has bookmarks, so you can go, oh, this is where this match starts, and this is where this interview is, and whatever. And they have not edited anything with Benoit out. Simply, you will not see any bookmarks, so his name is never, in the what's the word I'm looking for? In the interface.
Okay.
But everything is still there. It just has the WWE Championship match as the last thing of the night on WrestleMania 20, and yet there's this big 30-minute piece of video after that has no bookmark. Actually, I think it just says World Heavyweight Championship match, and it doesn't give the participants. But
okay, I wasn't aware of that. I thought they actually were editing him out of episodes and pay-per-views.
I don't believe they ever did that on the network. Now, they did that on releases of home video stuff and whatnot, prior to the network, but I don't think they ever did that on the network.
Okay. Myself, I did watch a few of the episodes of Raw with my sister from late 99, and I was actually surprised at how many of the episodes I actually remembered watching.
Part of the reason I've not gone back and watched some of that stuff is because I feel like I would remember all of it.
Well, the episodes that stood out that I did remember watching were Chris Jericho's debut.
Well, yeah, because that's like the best moment on Raw history for that period.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just saying out of the few I watched, and the other one was the wedding episode with Steph and Tess' wedding.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I'm watching with my sister, and I'm just sitting there and I'm going, man, Tess is sweating buckets.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, everyone else looks dry as a bone, but it is you can actually see it dripping off his face. It's like he reacting as if it was like his real wedding or something. I'm just amazed.
He was reacting as if he was a complete no-talent hack, and it's the biggest push he was ever going to get in his career, and he better not screw it up. That's what he was reacting at. Because there was no reason for him to be...
No. It was really, really weird. Yeah, and he basically kind of almost disappeared after that. But myself, I ended up watching every episode that they had on the on-demand of Something Else to Wrestle With, Bruce Pritchard, which I think it was only 9 episodes total.
That's most of the run. I think there's 13 total, but I could be wrong.
I remember some of the stories from some of the episodes I actually listened to of the podcast.
Oh, so I love the podcast, and they made a point. They said this on the podcast. They never actually said it on the network show. They made a point to pick some topics on the network show that they had already done on the podcast because of the fact that the WWE guys were going and finding all this archival video, and they just wanted to get some of this archival video shown on the network. So, like in the $1 Million Man episode, they talk about when they go and shoot the vignette when he picks up the $1 Million title, and there was a bunch of behind-the-scenes stuff that went with that. And that was the only reason they did that episode, was so they could get that behind-the-scenes stuff on the network. Because, as Conrad put it, they have no reason to ever put this stuff on the network, so we're giving them a reason to put it on the network.
That makes sense. The other reason I thought that the other reason I thought that they were specifically doing that for was how essentially they had already rehearsed the material, and WWE would have approved what they were going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, there was some things that there were a few episodes that they talked about things that they never touched on the podcast. So, but there was a lot of it that they had covered on the podcast. So,
yeah, the episodes I watched. Okay, I'm not going to be able to remember all of them, but I saw the $1 Million Man episode.
That one's really good. I
saw the Piper episode.
That one was pretty good.
The not Randy Savage, but Mega Powers.
I think the Mega Powers episode of both the podcast itself and of the network show are probably the best things they've ever done. I really like that whole Mega Powers storyline, so that's part of it. But I just hearing about the creative behind, that was a year-long storyline in like 87, 88.
Oh, that was a huge thing when we were kids.
It was such a big part of my early fandom, and it's still the high watermark for me of I wish they did stories this way, because that's the best story they've ever told as far as I'm concerned.
The funny thing to me is that run with Macho Man as a babyface is basically meant that when I was a kid, it really overshadowed his previous heel run. And then whenever he became a heel afterwards, it kind of cemented Macho Man in my head as being a face. I never thought of him principally as a heel character, even though he, at the time in the 80s and the early 90s, he mostly was.
I prefer him as a heel, and I like in that period when he's supposed to be a face. I loved that, and they point this out in the episode, how they were constantly alluding to the fact that he was going to turn and the jealousy and everything, and it was just like he's trying to be a good guy, but under the surface he's just got this boiling heel personality that was just waiting to come back out.
I'm trying to remember some of the other episodes they talked about. One was I think it was Shawn Michaels' 95 run.
That sounds right.
The Undertaker as the big evil period.
Now that's one that I don't think they've not done a dedicated episode about that on the podcast. They've talked about a little bit about the period, but
so that's actually mostly original material.
That one was mostly original, yes.
I can't remember what the other episodes were. Oh, was it WrestleMania 14?
I think they did a WrestleMania 14 episode. That's the first. No, that's Austin versus Michaels for the title.
Yeah. That is. Yeah, okay, that is the one I watched.
With Mike Tyson?
Yeah, there was like another episode or two, but I can't remember what they were.
Did they have this CM Punk episode on there?
No. I would have watched that.
Because that one was really good.
Oh, the Hardys. The Hardys was the other one that they had.
That one was completely original for the show, and I don't know, I didn't find that one that interesting.
I was a bit surprised watching it because it's basically a Jeff Hardy episode.
It is.
It really skips over a heck of a lot of really interesting stuff with Matt Hardy, just focusing exclusively on Jeff for the majority of it, which I was, quite frankly, I was a little bit disappointed by that episode because of that. But yeah, other than that, I actually ended up watching several episodes of Table for Three. I think there were more recent ones though, like the ones called Rivals, where it was Sting, Ric Flair, and Ricky the Dragon.
Yeah, I think what you're telling me is they're showing the current seasons of things on demand.
That's what it sounds like.
And you can probably look back in like a week or so, and you'll probably have a episode of Something to Wrestle that's missing, and then a new one that's there, because that's the way a lot of on-demand cable services work, is they rotate episodes in and out.
Yeah, that's how most of the ones for other cable channels that I check how they operate. Yeah, I'll take another look maybe next weekend I'll try looking to see if I can find any other ones, see if they have rotated anything. But yeah, basically that's all I've really done this past week. We did together end up watching a movie last night, though, and I think we're going to talk about that briefly right now.
Yeah. So we watched the newly released DC animated film Death of Superman, which is a sort of remake, rehash of their first ever movie, which was Superman Doomsday, that was largely just an original version of the story. This is much closer to the original comic, and it's set within the new 52 sort of universe of movies that they've been doing over the last several movies, which includes the couple of Titans films, the Justice League films, and the one Suicide Squad film, and then the Batman and Damian films.
In the build-up to this release, for the last year, they have been talking about how it was going to be much more accurate to the comic book. And story-wise, a lot of the big beats, specifically with Doomsday, whenever all the fighting and that starts, is basically most of it's basically there. Most of it's actually from the comics. But I was surprised that a lot of the supporting stuff or supporting plot lines are really original material. And if anything, the Lois and Clark plot line is the exact same one from the Superman Doomsday 2007 animated film they did, which was as we've already said, a reimagining. Just the idea that they're in a relationship and Clark is struggling with whether or not to tell Lois about his dual identity, which is something that was not in the Death of Superman storyline at all.
Well, in Death of Superman, in the actual story, they're already engaged. I think this, the original movie notwithstanding, I think this, within the continuity of these movies that they've set up, we're just getting heavy into the Superman-Lois relationship.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because it's essentially the New 52 Superman starting to turn into the Dan Jurgens late 80s, early 90s Superman, if just in plot lines.
Right.
Because, in the movie watching the movie last night, Wonder Woman and Superman allude to that they had been dating, which is in line with their New 52 characterizations.
Well, and it's what we've seen over the last several movies.
Well, I haven't seen any other New 52 DC animated films that they've done. This is the first DC animated film that I've watched since Superman Unbound, and that was 2013, I think.
13 sounds right.
Which is funny. That means that the last one was the year of Superman's 75th anniversary, and the new one is during Superman's 80th anniversary. I wonder if that means we have to wait for the 85th anniversary to get another one. No, I thought the movie was entertaining, and again, it's a reimagining, and in certain areas, there were changes that I did not care for, but there were changes that I really liked. I do like that they changed from the original story, the Justice League that was involved in the fight was the Justice League America International era, so it was much more the B-list Justice League, and in this, it's essentially the A line. It's the A team, the top of the line superheroes. So seeing them get beaten by Doomsday is much more impressive than seeing Booster Gold or Blue Beetle get taken down.
Right.
So I really did like that change. It's just the main thing that kept distracting me from the movie, though, is just while I was watching it, I just kept feeling like I was watching an anime. It did not feel like a DC animated film. The aesthetics, the animation itself, the sets, everything, the way faces look and the facial expressions, everything was, even the action scenes, everything looked like much more like it was out of something like Akira or Dragon Ball Z. I mean, Superman and Doomsday start charging at each other, and we all of a sudden just get these silhouette shots of their individual bodies with clouds and light show behind them, and that, which is like something out of Dragon Ball Z. I get it. Probably sounds kind of like nitpicking that. It's just I don't know, the aesthetic just did not work for me for this story. It just didn't fit. I don't think so.
Yeah, I thought the aesthetic was in line with the last 10 films they've done. I think they've all basically had the same animation style. So,
well, again, I haven't watched those. So essentially, the last batch that they've been doing for the last few years has been much more anime style then.
I wouldn't describe it as anime at all, but
I think it's definitely anime because American animation, everything that I have ever seen that this company has done, for the DC animated original movies from 2007 to 2013 has a very distinct look. Even if they change the character designs to look like different artists, it still has a very distinct style of animation and cell shading. This looked like the anime that I've seen in my life. I mean, you have the Lex's Lair, penthouse that looked like something out of a anime film. You have the effects that they were doing with the water effects look like that, like something out of an anime where you have like flickering lights kind of thing. The way the tears well up in the eyes, and the way the eyes look, and kind of like that flickering shake that they kind of give to expressions to show nervousness or anxiety or emotion. It's all basically shorthand stuff that's from anime. That's not American animation style. I was just really, really surprised, and to me it just kept taking me out of it.
So yeah, I this is my favorite DC animated film since Dark Knight Returns, which is what, 2012. And I think this was probably the second best Superman film I've ever seen. I would put it right up against the original Donner film. I think it was better than Man of Steel. I liked everything about this film. I thought they got everything pitch perfect.
I honestly, I'm not. I liked it. I don't know if I loved it. I think it's probably one I'm gonna have to watch again because honestly, I kind of went in a little bit apprehensive, which quite frankly is a dead universe right now, or rather a dead continuity, but they're still continuing with this. And the other aspect was I was a bit annoyed with the idea that they were touting this as being a true to the comics an adaptation of the Death of Superman storyline, reimagining to fit this continuity. Meanwhile, they were still doing these standalone Batman adaptations where they were doing much more strict takes on the original source material, such as you said, the Dark Knight Returns and also the Killing Joke. So I didn't understand why they just didn't do that. But I don't know. I probably didn't give it its due, and it probably deserves to another look for me. I'm sure at some point I'll watch it again.
Okay, so we're take 2 on the news here, and we were having some technical issues. We were hearing and not hearing Derek for a little bit there at the end of the what we're doing this week discussion. We've reconnected. Hopefully everything's good. So taking a second shot at the news. First news story is that professional wrestler Jim the Anvil Neidhart has passed away at the age of 63. As we were saying, with wrestling being a part of our lives in the 80s, he was a constant sort of stalwart member of that, maybe on the B level, but he was a guy that was always there. He was part of the original Hart Foundation with Bret Hart. He was part of the Hart Foundation revival in '97. He was also in the new Hart Foundation with Owen Hart, and for a while he wrestled under the mask of Who.
The thing with Jim the Anvil was that while he was never one of the A-list, upper echelon guys, he was always such a character that basically everyone knew who he was.
Oh yeah, he was. I guess he was a utility player, but he was a very important one.
Yeah, he was a great supporting cast member. I mean, he was a major fixture in the period where you and I got really heavily into wrestling as kids.
So
the mid to late 80s.
Bret Hart is my
90s.
all-time favorite wrestler, which I may have said on the show before. It starts with watching him in the Hart Foundation. And I think, if I remember correctly, as a young wrestling fan, the Hart Foundation were the first bad guys that I cheered. Because I just always loved Bret. And the package with him and Neidhart was...
The other thing is they look great. I mean, their outfits, the tights now, the black and the pink, it was just such a distinctive look. Leather jackets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he was a really fun, entertaining guy.
Yeah, the laugh and the goatee, and So did we get any news as to what he passed from? Because 63 is relatively...
I saw a couple of conflicting things. One was that he had recently taken ill with something, but it wasn't said what. And the other thing was that something about that there might have been undergoing some kind of procedure, and there was complications. But either of those are just really guesses, because I really honestly I don't know. Nothing, as far as I know, has legitimately come out. It's just been basically speculation at this point. I have to imagine it's something to do with his heart.
Yeah, the official statement from WWE.com actually doesn't mention anything about what he passed from. It just sort of gives a recap of his career.
Hadn't he had heart issues though in the past?
Not that I'm aware of, but that wouldn't surprise me.
I know.
Our next story is actress Ruby Rose has been cast as Batwoman in the upcoming CW Arrowverse crossover event, and due to harassment over the casting, she has quit Twitter, because that's a thing that keeps happening. I'm going to just say this quickly so I'm very clear about it. Popular lesbian actress gets cast as popular lesbian character. Entire Twitter decides she's completely wrong for the part and forces her off Twitter. That's basically what happened here.
Seriously, I do not understand what the problem was with this casting. I think I saw one thing that was claiming that she wasn't gay enough.
Whatever that means.
I don't even know what that means. I mean, jeez. She's been doing a bunch of action movies the last year or so, and has been legitimately really cool in those.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with this casting. I don't understand why anyone would have a problem with this casting.
When they announced the casting, I went, oh, I hadn't thought of that. That's kind of perfect.
I thought it was great casting. I was just a little surprised because I'm shocked that she would go back to doing network television whenever she has this burgeoning film career going.
Right. I mean, I didn't get a chance to see the Meg, but it is doing really well. And has gotten really good reviews. CBR said it might be the second greatest giant shark movie ever.
The thing that surprises me about this story, though, is the big build-up for the last several months has been that they're doing the Batwoman crossover, but it was also going to be a possible pilot for a Batwoman TV show.
Right.
But I didn't hear anything about her being contracted to do the TV show if that gets picked up or happens.
Right.
So is this going to be like a one-shot deal for her?
Yeah, it really, we don't know. We just don't have enough information yet.
But man, at this point, is it fair to say that Twitter is just the worst? Or at least it brings out the worst in a lot of people. I mean,
I'm using Twitter more because of promoting the show, but at the same time, I feel like I'm using Twitter less in my personal life, and I'm using Instagram and Facebook more, and Facebook's obviously where I started at, it's to the point where, like, it's this modern thing where anybody can say anything with a mask of anonymity, but it really seems like it's at its worst on Twitter. It's worse on Twitter than it is. And I don't know if that's because of the moderators that they have or lack thereof, or it doesn't, like, I post a bunch of my art on Instagram, and I don't ever get, like, anyone complaining about, that feels like to me like it would be a hot button topic where people would be insulting if they wanted to be, and anybody could do it. you know, and I'm not really having that issue on Instagram. I occasionally post political things or whatever on my Instagram, and I don't get like people freaking out about it. But like you say anything on Twitter slightly wrong, and the entire Twitter sphere goes off.
Oh God, everything from grammar police to tone police. It's insane. It's there's a I can't remember the exact quote, so I'm just gonna claim paraphrasing. But you know, there was the old quote from Oscar Wilde where, you know, give a man a mask and he'll tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the internet has proved, give a man a mask and he will be the worst, most obnoxious version of himself.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to focus on the positive of, I think she's a really good casting, but like we just have to keep mentioning these stories where these people are getting their, I'm not going to say their life ruined, because yeah, they're getting pushed off of Twitter, which, you know, is an industry tool and everything else, you know, it's something that an actor needs, but, you know, they're having to leave because of harassment, because, quite frankly, nerds, and I'm saying nerds because these are nerd properties, I'm not saying they represent the nerd population out there, but nerds don't like the person getting cast or the way that the project is going, so they're just going to raise, you know, remember when we were lucky to get anything superhero film related and we were just happy for all of it, and now we've gotten to the point where we just complain about all of it to the point that we force actors to go away.
Yeah, it's crazy. The thing is, this is adversely affecting the, you know, celebrities or people involved in the projects, because I mean, if you're getting the kind of hate and just disgusting nastiness and that, I mean, that's going to do something to your psyche.
You would think.
You know, some of these actresses that keep getting attacked are ones that have had to deal with well, look what happened 2 years ago with Leslie Jones, where it was just like this most disturbing racist garbage that was getting flung at her. It was just mind-boggling, horrendous. And then you have this kind of mentality where they're attacking like young starlets, not like girls are like as young as 17, if not younger. No, wait, Billy Bobby Brown was what, 14?
Yeah.
I mean, and then you get ones where they're attacking like the appearances or stuff like that. And you look at someone like Demi Lovato, where she's been struggling with mental health issues, and she just had an overdose a few weeks ago. I mean, this is adversely affecting people's actual health. This is insane. It's just, but put someone behind a keyboard with anonymity, and they act like they own the world, and that they can be as cruel and vindictive and disgusting, as monstrous as they want to be. Yeah, sure you can, but it doesn't make you a better person or superior person.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. The whole thing is just disturbing. It is, and it just saddens me that we keep having to discuss this topic.
She's gonna make a hell of a Batwoman.
I think she's gonna make a really, really cool Batwoman.
Yeah, for sure. Our next story is Stan Lee will no longer be making public appearances or signings at the age of 95. My grandmother was 94 when she passed away, so any of these beloved celebrities that get to this age level really starts to scare me. Stan Lee and my brain stopped working. Mel Brooks are like in my thoughts constantly nowadays, because I feel like anytime I see Mel Brooks' name in a headline, my heart stops, because I know it's coming. Right.
But yeah, jeez.
I mean,
the thing is, isn't he actually legally blind at this point?
I think that's the thing. I know, like when I missed my chance to see him at C2E2, then like he did his like last Canadian show right after that, and then like last overseas show. So it's like I knew this was coming for 2 or 3 years. You know, he had been really scaling back the number of shows he was doing. So it doesn't surprise me, but you know, it's just knowing that at a certain point he's not going to be here anymore.
Yeah. It's gonna be so weird.
We didn't mention it on the show, but he actually made his first cameo in a DC film recently because he provided the voice for himself in the Teen Titans animated movie.
I did hear about that. Yeah. The thing is, gosh, Stan Lee is the first comic book creator that I was aware of.
Yeah, I mean,
because he used to host like Spider-Man, His Amazing Friends, and the Incredible Hulk animated shows in the early '80s.
right.
And so he was the first comic book creator that I knew of. I mean, any Marvel comic that I had when I was like 5, you open up the front page and it was Stan Lee Presents.
Yeah, I once heard Kevin Smith describe it as he read a comic book. It was a Spider-Man comic book, and it was one of the first comics that he had ever read. And he said, as best as I could tell, there was a person that was the host of the comic book because of the way the way he used to write his caption bubbles in the comics, and with Stan Lee Presents and everything at the beginning.
I could see that, yeah. But I mean, I knew that there were writers, and I knew that there were artists, different types of artists that were making the comics. But Stan Lee was the first that I knew the name of that creator, because he was so branded. Yeah, it's gonna be a huge blow, but you know it's coming.
Right. Our next story: Park County coroner has ruled Margot Kidder's death as a suicide via a self-inflicted drug and alcohol overdose. I'm not going to say this surprises no one, but it didn't surprise me at all when I read it.
No. But then Margot Kidder has struggled with mental health issues for decades. Gosh, it's really depressing news week.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like she had been in a good place for the last few years, but...
I had thought so, but the thing is, depression, and if you have a chemical imbalance like bipolar disorder that she had, it never goes away.
Oh, no, I understand that.
You get periods where things are easier and a little brighter, but it's always going to be ups and downs, hills and valleys. It's just such a shame that it ended this way, because, I mean, she probably would have had another hill in front of her, if not several more.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I read that her daughter had said like she wanted it to be made public, so, not to like hide from what actually happened, so that people are aware that these things happen to celebrities and stuff too. Okay, moving on. The final story for the night: James Gunn is just not going to go away, and that's not to say that he's doing anything, but the story isn't going to go away. Let's try and run down the developments that have happened in the last week. I guess I could say not all of which are confirmed, but so Dave Bautista, who plays Drax, first said he would refuse to work on Guardians 3 if Disney Marvel did not use Gunn's screenplay. He later said that he would honor his legal obligations, but that Marvel DC would be stupid not to use Gunn's script. Gunn is reportedly being wooed by other studios to work for them, including Warner Brothers, with an unknown offer to work on a DC project, but they are contractual complications, and it is now being reported that Disney and Marvel's plans to use Gunn's script for Guardians, because of the tight schedule with the film's 2020 release date, and with Gunn's firing due to tweets that predated his hiring by Disney, he was never in breach of contract, and Disney may reportedly have to pay him $7 to $10 million for terminating his contract and using his script. Gunn is not free to accept offers until after contract exit negotiations from Disney finish. There are now reports that Marvel is championing Gunn's rehiring, and that closed-door, back-channel meetings are taking place between Marvel, Disney, and Gunn to seek a compromise and reinstate him as director of Guardians of the Galaxy 3, although none of the parties involved have confirmed any of that. Man, all I can really say is they'd be stupid. They were stupid to handle it the way they handle it, and they'd be stupid not to bring him back.
At this point, yeah, they would be.
I mean, okay, Batista's statement aside, Zoe Saldana's statements aside, do you want a good Guardians movie or do you want a bad Guardians movie?
That seems to be basically what the choice is at this point.
I mean, when they announced they were doing Guardians, no one thought it would be a thing that would work, and one guy made it work, and they got rid of that guy. And within Marvel, and by Marvel I should say, I mean, Marvel Studios, But within Marvel, they must feel strongly about his touch for the Guardians because he wrote all the scenes for Infinity War with the Guardians. You know, like the Russos basically said this is a Guardians scene. Have James Gunn write it. You know.
The other thing about that is there has been increasing. Well, up until his firing, there have been increasing reports that he was being, I don't want to say groomed, but taking on a larger and larger leadership role in regards to the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, that was my understanding as well.
So it's like he is one of the most important creators they have right now. Getting rid of him is basically hobbling themselves.
Right. I mean, if they got rid of the Russos or Feige at this point, it'd be a similar move. You know, like these are the guys that are constructing this universe, and you know. I know people have said, oh, we'll just have Waititi do it. And okay, putting aside my initial dislike of Thor Ragnarok, they're completely different humor styles.
They're completely different humor styles, and and also storytelling styles.
I mean, the idea that this is a funny one and that was a funny one, so just have that guy do it. It's like, whether you like either of them, don't like either of them, like one, don't like the other, like that's such a simplistic way to look at it.
It is. It's like saying Billy Wilder and Mel Brooks were similar directors,
right?
When they weren't.
But they're both funny guys.
No, they were both funny guys, but they were wildly different. Yeah, it's crazy.
So I don't know. They got to figure out something here because I don't have any faith for Guardians 3. I mean, I didn't have any faith for Guardians 1, and Gunn proved me wrong. So
the easiest thing to do would be just to take back the firing, because they're not even finished doing all the negotiations to terminate his contract, because he was in no violation of his contract. They actually essentially had no reason to fire him. Legally.
The problem as I see it, is that if they take back the firing, they're going to look wishy-washy.
You know what? Tough.
No, hey man, I'm right there with you on that. But that's the issue right now.
No, I get that, but tough. I think this is not meant to be a pun, but they jumped the gun.
Really, it sounded like.
Yeah, maybe it was a little bit of a pun.
No, they really did, and other people have handled this better. We mentioned WWE last week, and there was an issue with somebody from Cartoon Network Adult Swim that had a similar issue. I don't remember exactly who it was off the top of my head, but and everyone's like, oh, they're handling it better, but Disney handled this, and I know it probably has to do with how they handled Roseanne, but
definitely. I think one of the examples you're thinking of is Chris Hardwick.
Well, I wasn't thinking of him, but yeah, he's a good.
Because they did not outright fire him from Talking Dead.
I think it's a dissimilar situation, but I like how they handled it.
They handled it by saying, we're going to do an internal investigation, which is what Disney should have said, and just quietly waited to see what the reaction would be, rather than just saying, well, he's fired. So
yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see what happens. We're either going to get a good Guardians film or a Guardians film. So, and this could greatly impact the future of the MCU if that Guardians film doesn't go off right. So, on to our main topic of the week. And what is our main topic of the week, Derek?
Well, our main topic this week, which I was really looking forward to having this discussion. Hopefully we'll actually be able to have this discussion tonight, is Big Trouble in Little China.
So quickly to run down the plot courtesy of Wikipedia. Now I know I read this plot earlier in the week, and there's a couple parts that I think are wrong, so I might do a little bit of editing. Big talking rough and tumble truck driver Jack Burton wins a bet with a restaurant owner friend Wang Chi. To make sure he follows through on the payment, Jack accompanies him to an airport to pick up Wang's Chinese fiancée, Miao Yin. A Chinese street gang, the Lords of Death, try to kidnap another Chinese girl at the airport, who are being met by her friend Gracie Law, intending to sell her as a sex slave. And Jack intervenes. After Jack intervenes, they take Miao Yin by mistake. Jack and Wang track the Lords of Death to the back alleys of Chinatown, where they find a funeral procession that quickly erupts into a Tong War between the Chang Xing and Wing Kong, two ancient Chinese societies. When the three storms, thunder, rain, and lightning, mighty warriors with weather-themed powers, appear, slaughtering the Chang Xing, Jack attempts to gun his big rig through the crowd, but runs over David Lo Pan. Here's where Wikipedia says a decrepit man directing the three storms, but he is not decrepit at this point. Horrified, Jack exits his truck, but finds Lo Pan unfazed and glowing with magic. Wang hurriedly guides Jack through the alleys. The two escape the carnage and mayhem, but Jack's truck is stolen. Wang takes Jack to his restaurant, where they meet up with Gracie, her journalist friend Margot, Wang's friend Eddie Lee, and magician Egg Shen, a local authority on mysticism and Lo Pan. They try to explain to incredulous Jack, who only wants to get his truck back, the ancient knowledge and sorcery the Chinese brought with them to America. The group devises a plan to infiltrate a brothel where they believe Miao Yin is held. They break in with some difficulty, but are interrupted by the storms tearing off the ceiling and making off with Miao Yin, taking her to their master Lo Pan. Jack and Wang track down the front business used by Lo Pan and impersonate electricians to gain access, but are quickly subdued by rain. After being tied up and beaten by thunder, the two meet Lo Pan. However, he now appears as a crippled old man. See, here he's decrepit. Wang tells Jack that Lo Pan needs a special green-eyed girl to break an ancient curse, and he intends to sacrifice Miao Yin. Centuries ago, Lo Pan, a great warrior and even greater wizard, was defeated in battle by the first sovereign emperor, Qin Shi Huang. I probably butchered that, but maybe I didn't. The emperor cursed Lo Pan with incorporeality, although Lo Pan can be temporarily granted a decrepit body by supplication to the gods. He must marry a woman with green eyes to appease Changde, the Chinese god of the East, and sacrifice her to satisfy the emperor. When Jack and Wang's friends attempt to save them, they are also captured. After getting the drop on Thunder, Jack, Wang, and Eddie escape and free many women kept in holding cells in the process. During the escape, a horrible orangutan-like monster captures Gracie before she escapes. Lo Pan notes that Gracie has green eyes too. Lo Pan decides to sacrifice Gracie while making Miao Yin his unwilling wife. Wang and Jack regroup with the Chang Xing and Egg Shen, and as a group, they enter the underground cavern to return to Lo Pan's headquarters. Egg pours each of the group a potent potion that Jack says makes him feel kind of invincible. The group interrupts the wedding ceremony, which breaks out into a battle. Jack accidentally knocks himself out by shooting a piece of the ceiling that falls on his head and promptly is trapped under a suit of armor when he comes to. Wang kills Rain in a sword duel while Jack and Gracie chase the newly alive Lo Pan. Wang joins them. Just when all seems lost, Jack kills Lo Pan with a skillful knife throw. Thunder, who had been distracted with Wang, reappears. Furious at finding Lo Pan dead, explodes. Jack, Wang, Gracie, and Miao Yin are cornered by lightning in the corridor, who triggers a collapse with his powers. Egg rescues them with a rope and kills Lightning by dropping a stone Buddha statue on him when he tries to follow. After finding Jack's truck and dealing with the remaining Wing Kong guards, the group busts out and escapes back to Wang's restaurant. The group celebrates their victory in the restaurant with the rescued women. Wang and Miao prepare to marry, while Eddie pairs with Margot. Egg sets off on a long due vacation. Jack suggests his homeland, but Egg says that China is in his heart. Jack, though attracted to Gracie, turns down an offer to stay and begins trucking again, not wanting to be tied down. Unbeknownst to him, the orangutan-like monster survived the battle in the labyrinth and is stowed away on his truck. So that's the plot. Do you want to hit us with some of the production?
Well, first I was going to ask what you thought were some of the errors that were in there.
It was the I corrected him as I went. It was him being decrepit in the alley. And
I thought there was a couple of other things. The production. So this movie came out in 1986 and is directed by John Carpenter. Really, for the production, what I wanted to really talk about briefly was how apparently this actually started as a screenplay for a movie set in the 1880s in Old West San Francisco. It was essentially supposed to be a weird Western, or what's the term, Weird West?
Yeah, a weird Western.
But whenever Carpenter got attached, and I believe actually the studio head wanted it updated to more modern San Francisco, modern Chinatown, and but the funny thing is, when you watch the movie, you can really tell that it's supposed to be a Western. You can really see the elements of how it would have been.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Because Jack is a truck driver in the finished film, but you could easily see how he would have been a roving cowboy, just coming into town, with the rest being of the characters being local Chinatown members and that. I'm sure probably Wang's restaurant probably would have been a saloon or some kind of like hotel saloon type business.
Yeah, I mean that all makes sense.
And Gracie as some kind of like suffragette, looking to protect the women who were immigrating from China from getting pulled into the prostitution ring by the gang. So you can really see how all the stuff would have worked as a Western. The thing about this movie is that, to me, it really feels, in the end, like it was John Carpenter doing a comedy version of a Shaw Brothers film, but starring John Wayne as a comedy sidekick.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a John Wayne vibe to Russell's performance.
I remember years ago, I mean, but it even have been like 20 years ago, reading an interview with Kurt Russell where he basically said that he was playing it as a spoof on John Wayne.
I mean, he's basically doing a John Wayne voice, if not a outright impersonation. He's doing the cadence and delivery.
He's doing this right, and sort of that John Wayne kind of swagger, only exaggerated.
Right.
So as I said, this came out in 1986. How did you first hear about this movie?
Oh man, I don't know. I've always known about this movie. I probably saw the trailers on TV when it first came out.
The funny thing to me is that I actually don't remember the trailers for the movie or knowing about the movie when it was actually in theaters. I imagine I must have seen trailers on television at the time. The only time that it really kind of gels in my memory is whenever I first saw it on HBO at my grandparents' house. And we used to watch it on HBO quite often whenever we'd go and visit.
Yeah, I don't think I actually saw it until maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, it just surprises me. Because this was one of those movies where I just kind of thought that anyone like our age would have seen this whenever it came out. You know, because this also came out at the height of or at least whenever the home video, like Blockbuster and the mom and pop video rental stores and that were at like just starting to like basically pop up everywhere.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I just never saw it. I know even without having seen it, I know there was a lot of it that I knew and was able to even quote. And I knew people that had seen it regularly, but I just had never seen it. I'm sure I'd seen bits and pieces of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, when Mortal Kombat came out, I knew all the stuff in Mortal Kombat was from this movie. So, somehow I knew that.
I never actually noticed that.
What, are you kidding? The entirety of Mortal Kombat is ripped off from this movie.
Yeah, it's funny, but I've never noticed that. But I totally see it now that you mention it.
I mean,
even some of the names of the characters.
I mean, Wang is basically Liu Kang, and the Storms are Raiden, and Lo Pan is Shang Tsung, and yeah, it's all Mortal Kombat.
Oh gosh, was it Goro? Could be the big monster.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. I guess I mean Sonya Blade is in a really weird way Gracie Law.
Well, I mean Jack's kind of in a roundabout way a kind of Johnny Cage type character. So yeah, I mean I always knew this stuff is from Mortal Kombat when Mortal Kombat came out. You know, I mean equal parts Enter the Dragon, some other things, but there's a lot of stuff from Big Trouble in Little China in Mortal Kombat. So yeah, I was always aware of it, but yeah, I don't think I ever sat and watched the movie proper until about 5 years ago. Maybe even a little more recently than that.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I would have thought that you hadn't seen it until like 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, I'm not sure when I bought it on Blu-ray. It would have been a little bit before that.
I don't know. Part of me thinks that the first time you saw it was watching it with me over Skype, but I'm not 100% sure.
That's not
Oh,
accurate.
okay. Well, do you want to get into talking about some of the characters?
Sure.
Well, right off the bat, there's Jack Burton, who we have already established is Kurt Russell doing a spoof of John Wayne.
Yeah, he's the guy who thinks he's the hero, but actually isn't.
I've really gone back and forth a lot on this, and I think it's kind of in the middle. The general accepted take on it is that they intended it to be that he was the sidekick and he was the comic relief. He's definitely the comic relief. There's no two ways about that. But that he was the sidekick and that Wang Chi is the main character. And I kind of see that. No, I agree with that in a large part. But Jack is still the lead character.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know how to say this without coming off derisive, but like Wang is sort of uninteresting.
He kind of is.
So if he's the main hero guy, he's an uninteresting main hero guy. The most memorable thing to me about Wang is his little speech where he's like, I don't know, why can't you go, why isn't it safe to walk through Central Park anymore, or whatever? Because it seems like such a manufactured fake outrage speech.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't really belong in the scene. And everything else, he's just kind of there. Whereas Jack always has your attention.
Yeah, Jack is definitely the lead. And the thing is, we always talk about how, it's always made up that he's the fool or the idiot who thinks he's the hero, but he's not the hero. But the thing is, he still does heroic things.
He still excels and does heroic actions. He's not completely... He does things like shooting the ceiling and knocking himself out because the debris falls on his head. But he also kills the main bad guy with a skillful knife throw.
Right. He also does some really incredible feats too, such as whenever he falls backward on the wheelchair, then it hits the edge of the well, and he's going to go over and fall to his death, but he's able to use his strength to just pull himself back out of the chair, pull it upright, and so he's got stuff like that, and he still does a lot of heroic things. Really, if anything, he is a hero. I don't think he's the sidekick. I think it's more that they're partners. It's much more of a Green Hornet, Kato, or Batman and Superman type relationship necessarily than is Batman and Robin.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
They're much more of a partnership. It's just that, if anything, he's a flawed hero. And he's a hero
for sure.
He's a hero who makes a lot of mistakes. But he still does it. In the end, he still does a lot of like really grand heroic feats. A couple of things that I like about the character, though, is that he's really confused by a lot of the stuff that goes on in this movie.
Oh, he never knows what's going on. He has no idea what's going on throughout the entire movie.
That's the funny thing. He never knows what's going on throughout the entirety of the movie, and it always seems like Wang knows more than he should.
Wang knows everything. Like, Wang has an answer for everything. And Jack almost, like, it borders on when he gets confused, he actually starts spouting nonsense. Like, when he sees the Guardian, he says, like, what is that? Oh, no, don't tell me. What is that? Jesus, don't tell me. And it's like, none of that makes sense as a sentence,
No. It kind of seems like we really, whenever we're talking about Jack, we have to talk about Wang also, because they're like kind of like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing is, okay, Wang is not as interesting as Jack, but I still really like him in the movie because I still think he's a very personable and charming guy.
He's a charming guy. He's a very nice guy, but he's not interesting. That's and for some reason he's Doctor Who, because I keep pointing that out. He's got a jaunty hat and a scarf at the beginning of the movie, and I don't really quite know why. And I every time I see it, I go, "Is Wang Doctor Who?" Maybe that's how he knows everything.
His outfit at the beginning is very much like Tom Baker's Fourth Doctor. Yeah, no, I agree with you.
So yeah, I mean, I don't dislike him at all, but
The thing is, he also gets quite a few funny lines too, and I love the idea. We were discussing it whenever we were rewatching the movie for this podcast, where you pointed out that everything's got to be Chinese, whenever he's describing everything.
Yeah, no, he's the Chinese version of Chekhov.
Yeah, basically. Oh gosh. Well, what's the one thing? He says Chinese standoff. Isn't it just a regular standoff?
Yeah, I mean, there's a Mexican standoff, and that's specifically 3 groups. Everything else is just a standoff.
I guess it's a Chinese standoff because they were Chinese men.
It was invented by a little old lady from Peking.
Chinese Chekhov.
No, he says that a lot. And then couple that with the whole different hells that they keep making the jokes about, and it's just him making a lot of like everything's Chinese.
I just love the idea that he knows more than he really should. Although I suppose that could just be him kind of trying to think of the PG way of saying it, BSing his way through everything. Like Jack gets blinded whenever he first sees Lo Pang, and the light starts coming out of Lo Pang's eyes and his mouth, and Jack gets blinded, and Jack kind of freaking out about that, and Wang says, it's only temporary. I mean, he doesn't know that.
But he does.
But he does, because he's Wang Chi, and he knows everything.
No, he really, he really does.
Really
I don't know what to say about it.
Yeah, it's really funny. You have, on the one hand, you have the hero who doesn't know what's going on at any given moment, and the hero who seems to know everything. This might be why they make such a good pair.
Yeah, I mean, one's giving good direction to the other one, so.
Should we move on to Gracie Law?
Yeah, I mean, what is there to really say about Gracie? Not every, but for the first maybe third to half of the movie, everything she says is just exposition, including the way she introduces herself when she first shows up.
Yeah,
it's just me, Gracie Law.
My brother and I used to have a running joke where we would talk about her being, every time we would watch the movie, we would talk about her being Miss Exposition. Yeah,
and Margot's the same way. So really, all the females in this, there's 3 females in this movie. One of them doesn't talk at all, and the other 2 just spout exposition. I think Margot spouts exposition all the way to the end of the film, though, whereas Gracie only does it for like the first half, maybe.
Yeah, very much in her introductory scene, or not her introductory scene, but whenever she shows up in the restaurant, and then whenever they have the meeting a little later before they go back.
Right.
I really like Gracie in this movie. Kim Cattrall, I think, is fantastic in this movie. And one of the things I like about the character is she is not the typical damsel in distress. We never get the moment of her screaming and, carrying on.
That's definitely something good about the character. And she's mentioned that in the past. That, she's kind of... It's not so much that her and Jack are equals, but it's just like she gets into these situations and she kind of starts working on how to get herself out instead of just waiting for the hero to sit around waiting for the hero to come get her.
Look, so she gets captured by them, and she's chained to the floor, and elderly Lo Pan comes to see her and is gloating over her, and she's talking back, and she's trying to bite his fingers off.
Right.
I mean, I think he says she's feisty, and she is. But that's kind of the thing. She is the brains, but she's not really strong enough to really defend herself. But then you have Jack, who's an idiot, but he's the heroic bravado guy. The thing is, she's still also heroic, but she's not a wilting flower.
No, right, exactly.
To a large degree, this is almost a parody of a Indiana Jones film.
Yeah, I could see that.
If Indiana Jones was an idiot, if I might be so bold, it's almost a parody of like Temple of Doom.
Yeah, to a degree.
I
don't know. I don't know that I've ever actually liked Kim Cattrall in anything.
I loved Kim Cattrall when I was a kid. I mean, I was seeing her in this. I was seeing her in Police Academy. Mannequin was a movie that I watched a lot with my older sister whenever we were growing up. So,
I mean, the closest I could say is Star Trek 6, and even that's somewhat dubious.
I'm just saying, I definitely knew who she was when I was a kid.
No, I definitely knew who she was, and I knew I didn't like her, so...
Well, I loved her. The thing about the introductory scene with Gracie, though, is another example of Wang. You know, the whole idea of Wang knows more than he should. Because we have the shot of Wang, and he's thinking about Miao Yin, and he's describing her as having, this, the green eyes, like, what does he say, cloudy jade?
Something jade, yeah, I don't remember exactly
milky jade, something like that. But he says that as Jack is looking at Gracie from across the way, and Jack says, "How can you tell that from here?" And Wang says, "Not her. That's Gracie Law, and she's trouble. Blah 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 blah." But the thing is,
of course, Wang knows who she is.
Right. But the thing is, he was right. She has the exact same eye color.
Yeah, but it's more or less coincidence.
But okay, that's one of the things with this movie that a huge portion of this movie hinges on coincidence. Just so happened, the gang shows up specifically to kidnap the one girl who Gracie is there to protect, and they end up grabbing Miao Yin almost accidentally. Kind of in desperation, just to grab someone. And it just so happens to be a green-eyed Chinese girl. And it just so happens that the Chinese girl they were intending to abduct was a green-eyed white woman. And they have the same eye color, and it factors in entirely into Lo Pan's plans that he's been waiting 2,000 years to complete. This whole entire movie is nothing but coincidence after coincidence after coincidence.
It really is.
I'm going to get more into that a little later, though. Well, we've been talking about David Lo Pan. Let's talk a little bit more about him.
Go ahead.
I love James Hong in this movie. He is so funny in this film. I honestly believe that Hong gets some of the best lines in this film.
Yeah, I think he's generally the best thing in the film, actually. It's just it's almost a film of broad performances, and he has I think he has the broadest performance of them all in the course of that film. So
yeah, because he gets all the, whenever he's the elderly version of Lo Pan in the wheelchair, it's just he gets all these really cutting quips and remarks and that are just really, really funny. I think it just, I don't know, he just really amuses me in this movie. Basically plays he's playing the same character in two different styles.
Oh, yeah.
Lo Pan, the ghost giant sorcerer, and then he's the creepy kind of lecherous elderly man in the wheelchair. But he's completely believable as the same character on both, even though we get different elements of the character depending on which version we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Things I don't think there's a bad performance in this movie. I think this movie is incredibly well cast. It was like kind of a wealth of Chinese American actors from 1986.
Right. Yeah, I mentioned last night it sort of really bothers me that all the dialogue and everything in the scene where they're in the alley points to the fact that Jack drove through Lo Pan, even though we clearly see him bounce off the front of the truck. And I could forgive that if they just didn't have the budget to do the sort of incorporeal visual effect, but they do it several times throughout the rest of the film.
The thing is, they could have done the effect without actually having to do the visual effect by simply just editing, cutting away.
Oh, absolutely.
From the moment
they should have just cut away.
They
should have just cut away and then showed him behind. That would have worked fine. But you literally see him bounce and hear the thud of him bouncing off the truck. It kills all believability that he incorporeally floated through the truck.
Yeah, that's That's one of the problems I kind of have with the movie.
He also, I kind of feel like the whole, oh, I'll just kill the one and marry the other one is a real cheat to what is supposed to be a really complicated way to get out of a curse.
But the thing is, I think I think in the end he was basically being punished by trying to cheat his god.
Well, I mean, it doesn't work out for him, but I think
I believe that that's actually what he was trying to do. Was he was trying to use it as a way to cheat.
no, that's what I'm saying. He absolutely was using it as a way to cheat it.
And I think that's why he fails. Because technically he gets what he wanted, to be made flesh and blood again, and he's instantly killed.
Right.
He's like human again for like 5 minutes. Because the whole thing is, I think he was actually in hell. His hell, instead of being the hell of being boiled alive, it was the hell of or being flayed alive. It was the hell of being incorporeal in the material world. And he tried to cheat his way out of it and end up in a worse situation.
Yeah, I mean, I could buy that.
I think that's the character's fatal flaw, is that he's not self-aware of that. But he's got, okay, one of the lines that I like, because as I said, he's got a bunch of them, and I didn't really catch it until, kind of rewatching the movie myself this afternoon, is whenever he's on the phone and he's complaining about Jack and the others that are going through the building. This is whenever he's still in the elderly body.
Mm.
And he says on the phone, boil them until their flesh falls off. You heard me. It's I don't know, it's just the way he says it is funny to me.
Yeah, it's overly complicated. Just kill him.
Yeah, he's an entertaining theatrical villain. The character could have been incredibly one-dimensional or boring, but James Hong just makes him really funny and lively and memorable.
Well, the strength of the movie as a whole is not taking anything seriously. So they don't have him as the sinister, malevolent evil. They have him as a comedic bad guy. Like, I think I pointed this out the other night when we watched it. When he's controlling the animated statue and Egg is controlling the other one, that he's like wiggling his thumbs, and it looks like he's using a video game controller as he's controlling this thing.
It really, really does.
So, like, yeah, I mean, it's little touches like that, like I said, nothing is serious in the movie, so.
But as I was saying, this film is just really well cast, top to bottom. Some of the other supporting characters, we're not going to get into them as much, but I just wanted to briefly mention Egg Shen, played by Victor Wong, Margot, played by Kate Burton, who I always forget is Richard Burton's daughter.
Oh, I would have never put that together.
Every time I see the movie and I look it up later, I go, oh, that's right. And I always forget that. And Eddie Lee, played by Donald Lee. Again, all three. See, that's the great thing about this movie is we're talking about the fifth and sixth and seventh characters in this ensemble and that, and they don't necessarily get a lot of screen time, but everyone is so memorable and gets their moments.
Eddie Lee is a weird one because I literally don't know why he's there.
He's basically just there because he's the new maitre d'.
I mean, they introduce him as the new maitre d', but then the part really seems like he's the local Chinese detective on the police force or something. Like, he's not his character. he's not the maitre d'. He never comes off like he's just there because he's the maitre d'. It always comes off as like he's somebody in the know, like a policeman or a lawyer or somebody who is there with information.
It might have made more sense if the character was a local private detective.
Yeah, a private detective would have been perfect.
But no, he's just happens to be a maitre d'.
And it always throws me when they say he's a maitre d', because I always remember him watching the movie as being a private detective that helps him. So, or a police detective that helps him. So yeah, I don't understand that character or even like how he contributes to the plot at all. Other than, again, he gets a little bit of the everything I say is exposition. Not as much as the girls do, but he definitely has a bit of it.
He does. Yeah, I mean, you probably could have worked the character into just combining him with Wang, but I don't know. I think he's an amusing character in the film. The three storms. I've always been a little bit confused about what they're technically supposed to be. Whether or not they're supposed to be gods or just, I don't know, magicians.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, they're awesome, and the lightning effects on lightning are really top notch for the time period that this movie came out in.
I'm surprised at how well those actually hold up.
We see them stand up to a hail of gunfire, and yet, Rain gets stabbed, lightning gets crushed, and Thunder literally self-destructs himself. And, like, they couldn't come up with a way for them to defeat Thunder, so they just have Thunder kill himself. Like, so they're awesome. Their powers are amazing. They're really fun to watch, but then they all get taken out kind of cheap.
I think the worst to me is Lightning's death, just by this, like, what it was, 100-pound statue hits him in the head.
Yeah, his is probably... it's a toss-up for me between Lightning and Thunder, because Thunder could have just probably kicked all their asses, but instead he decided to die.
Is it that he just got so angry he lost control and exploded?
That's what the plot says. That's the plot that I just read says, but...
or is it that he was so distraught that his master died that he was going to commit suicide and hopefully take out the others? I've never been able to figure it out for myself.
I could see that. I could get that read if it looked like him dying would have had any effect on anything around him. But it, like, he self-destructed and exploded, and the explosion had no effect on anything around him. Just him.
We don't even know if they were mortal. They could still be around.
That's true, but I mean, like, we see Rain just get stabbed after he got shot several times and with no effect.
I'm kind of willing to accept the idea that the reason they were so easily defeated was that the potion that Egg Shen gave Jack and Wang and the others. I think he actually makes the point that it allows you to see past illusions, and from that point on, Wang is flying around and jumping and leaping superhumanly.
The potion definitely makes them superhuman, but are you suggesting that the storms actually aren't superhuman, but just elaborate illusions, and they're able to see through the illusion and see them for their mortal selves?
I think so, but I do think that the storms still have superhuman powers. They're able to see that they're them for actually being mortal, or at least that the potion, by making the heroes superhuman, makes them their attacks able to kill and defeat the storms, whereas any attacks that they had done with, like, bladed weapons or guns earlier wouldn't have had any effect on them.
That gets iffy. I don't know if I agree with you there.
Honestly,
I think there's something to what you're saying, but I just don't think we've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, I am kind of grasping at straws. I admit that freely. The thing is, though, it's just again the same thing that I said about Lo Pan is that they're just so theatrical.
Oh, they are. The three of them are great. They're probably my favorite thing. So.
The matching outfits, but they're all slightly individualized, and then the powers, the sound effects whenever they use their abilities.
Right. It is sort of weird in that middle part of the movie where they're like in suits. It's just they don't seem right when they're in suits. But
the thing that's always struck me as odd is whenever we see Rain in the suit, he's a pretty decent looking guy. He's not a bad looking guy.
Well,
but whenever he's in the outfit now with the hat and everything, all he's making is this, like, really weird facial expressions.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Thunder comes off as, like, a regular guy when he's in his suit too. So
it's just my point being that Rain is making, like, these, like, really goofy faces whenever he's in the hat. But I think that might be because he's got, like, kind of almost a double chin strap, where the other two, it goes under the chin. It goes under the chin, but then he's got an extra strap that's pushing his lower lip up. So I think it's kind of making his face kind of scrunch up, so he looks really ridiculous whenever they do close-ups of him in the hat. Mm-hmm. Who do you think is most powerful? It's got to be Lightning.
See, I kind of feel like it's Thunder, and that's why they had to find the cheapest way to kill him. Thunder seems like the commanding one out of the three. So, but lightning definitely looks the coolest with all the lightning stuff crackling around him. Rain, frankly, seems the least impressive to me.
I just really like the sound effect whenever Rain is doing his kind of jumps and the slashes and that, and we got the type sound.
Oh yeah, I mean all that stuff's great. Everything around their design is really good in the movie. So
I'm trying to look quickly at my notes because I thought I had a couple of other thoughts on them, but I can't think of it at the moment. Yeah, okay. Moving on from the characters, I don't know. Maybe talk about some of the little nagging things about the movie and that.
We've kind of got hit in a lot of them as we've gone.
One. Okay, I'm gonna say one that kind of confuses me. The Lords of Death, the gang from the beginning that kidnapped Miao Yin. Do they or do they not work for Lopan and Lopan's organization?
I don't think they do because they weren't there to get Miao Yin to because of the green eyes. They stumbled upon it.
Right.
And then he took advantage of it.
Okay.
So I don't think they do, but there's nothing definitive in the movie that says one way or the other. I'm gonna point out from my notes because I keep stumbling over it all night. Every time they say Miao Yin's name in the movie, I hear Miao Lin, and I can't even. I'm having trouble not saying Miao Lin every time. So
I keep pausing before I say her name because I keep worrying I'm going to say Meow.
I also have a note that says Kim Cattrall does not own a bra. So go back and watch for that.
Oh, gosh. I have owned this... Okay, I've seen this movie probably a couple dozen times growing up on television, on HBO, then late night TV, and then I end up getting it on VHS sometime in the mid-90s. And I had that for years, and then I got it on DVD, and I had that for years. And then I got the Blu-ray last year, I think.
Uh-huh.
And it took me seeing it, the film in high definition, to really notice in all the close-ups how obviously fake the green contact lenses are that Kim Cattrall and that the actress is Susie Pei, who plays Miao Yin. How obviously fake the contacts are, because it's basically almost like just solid green with just they put like a squiggly line.
Yeah, you even pointed out a spot in the movie the other night where you could see the contact move in Kim Cattrall's eye.
Oh yeah. It was whenever Jack goes and approaches her at the beginning of the movie in the airport, and she turns. They have the brief moment where they're not talking, and she turns to look at him. And then turns to look away. And when she moves to look at him, you can see the contact actually move, and you end up with up into her upper eyelid, and so you end up with her iris is half brown, half green. It's kind of freaky. I mean, this is stuff I never noticed, and I've seen the movie like so many times before. I don't know. Maybe sometimes high definition isn't a good thing.
I mean, sometimes you just notice things in movies that, whether high definition or not, that you never noticed before. I'll never forget the first time I noticed in RoboCop when they're out on the street testing out the guns, and the lieutenant, I can't think of the guy's name, the second in command guy of the gang, smacks the roof of the car and the rearview mirror falls off. I remember the first time I noticed that, and I was like, oh my god, the rearview mirror just fell off that car, and they totally left that shot in. And now it's like it's all I can ever see in that scene is that rearview mirror falling.
Well, ever since I first noticed the thing with the contact moving in Kim Cattrall's eye, it's all I can notice whenever I watch that scene now. Because I'm watching to see if it's moving or if it isn't in each shot.
Right.
Another thing that, okay, I pointed it out when we were watching it the other day, but in hindsight, it's something where I think I probably actually knew it before, but just forgot. And that was whenever they go, the group, when Jack and Wang team up with Egg and go back to Egg's base along with the other unnamed guys. The base is in an old firehouse, and we're watching it the other day, and I said, I think it's the firehouse from Ghostbusters.
Right. At which point I'm like, okay, it kind of clearly is, but then we actually looked into it.
Yeah, and it actually was. Yeah, it's the kind of thing where I'm not sure if I actually noticed it before and just forgot.
Yeah, I mean, when you looked it up, you mentioned that it was also the firehouse used in The Mask.
Yes.
And
yeah, it's the garage.
The garage, yeah. And I sort of had the thought in my head of, how did I never notice that before? Because I haven't seen The Mask in 8 years or so, 8 to 10 years. And just you saying that, I went, oh, that's so clearly that same garage. You know?
The thing is, I think I actually did know that it was that the firehouse from Ghostbusters was the garage in The Mask, because I had read about that a few years back.
Mm-hmm.
It's just funny how some of these landmarks and buildings that end up getting reused over and over and over in different films.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a bunch of like different times they've used different buildings for Wayne Manor in various Batman films. Have been like famous mansions from other movies as well, and you know, like the whole chemical factory scene in the first Batman film is the colony from Aliens. So.
Oh, that's right. I always forget about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really clearly the same set. So.
I don't know. Maybe we should start wrapping up here. Move on to the legacy of the movie. This movie's one of those strange ones where it came out, it completely tanked. Essentially, it was forgotten, but then got discovered, or I should say rediscovered on home video because of the burgeoning mom and pop's rental stores that we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And late night television viewings, and that's where it really started to develop its cult following and its reputation.
Right.
That kind of thing, it doesn't seem to really happen anymore now.
I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think of the last time I can remember that happening. One of them was Austin Powers, the first one, but that's like almost 20 years ago, or it is like 20 years ago.
That was 20 years ago, and the video rental Blockbuster was still a major
right.
thing. It became huge because of rentals at Blockbuster.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's a thing that still happens. Like if there's an equivalency with, like, say, pay-per-view rentals or even just HBO or whatever, you know.
I guess Netflix.
Or Netflix, yeah. I don't know. I can't think of a film that's happened with, really.
I'll tell
I mean, there's a lot of films that they keep making sequels to that I don't understand how they keep getting sequels. So that might be a case, but that just might be my tastes being different. So
I'm going to tell you a film that was not really successful. I don't know if it was necessarily a bomb, because I have no idea how much it cost and I have no idea how much it made. But a film that kind of just came out and disappeared, and I saw it and thought it was phenomenal. And that was Stardust. And whenever I was watching the movie, whenever the movie finished, I distinctly said that if the movie came out in like the 80s or whatever, I could have easily seen it becoming something like The Princess Bride,
mm-hmm.
where it tanked in theater, but then got rediscovered, ended up becoming like a major thing because it was the same style of film where it was just this really, really fun fantasy film with a lot of comedy and a lot of heart. And I have been for like, I don't know, it's been like, what, 10 years since that movie came out? Like, what was it, 2007?
It's been more than that.
2009?
I'd have to look it up, but I feel like it's been a lot longer than that.
I don't think it's been that long. But I've just been spending all this time expecting it to become the new Princess Bride or Trouble in Little China. And it just simply has not happened.
Right.
I mean, it's got some fans, but I don't think it's got like a really huge cult following.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's other films like that too, and there's definitely films that come out where I go, oh, I'm gonna go see this film in the theater, and I say, oh, well, no one's ever gonna care about this film, but I really liked it, and I could. In the old days, it might have become a cult. Valerian was like that.
Oh yeah.
You know, that movie tanked, and for what it was, I really enjoyed it, and I could see that being a cult classic in the right situation, but you don't really have that thing happening anymore, like you were saying.
No, because we had that whenever The Fifth Element came out.
Right.
which is why The Fifth Element has such a reputation today.
Right.
It's a little bit sad. I'm going to say one thing about the change in the profile and reputation of Big Trouble in Little China can basically be summed up by the merchandising. When I was a kid, I think I was 11 the first time I saw this movie,
Mm-hmm.
and I have loved this movie since I was 11. And there was literally no merchandise for it, except for maybe soundtrack albums, but with John Carpenter's score. I think that was like essentially it. But I loved this movie, and there was no merchandise. And then all of a sudden, like 5 years ago, they started merchandising this movie, and now I have like 7 Funko Pop figures for this film, and like 6 Funko reaction figures. I've got like mini posters, all for this one movie, which I don't know. It just amuses me that something that I loved as a kid and would have loved to have collected stuff for as a kid, I couldn't start buying that stuff until I was like 38, 39, 40.
It is a little weird. That's sort of just where we are. I'm sitting in my room surrounded by Funko Pops and superhero statues and superhero movie posters, and I would have loved to have had any of this stuff as a kid. And, not that there weren't toys when we were kids, but, like...
Well, I'm going to give you an example.
It's very much the case of toys were for kids
right.
back then, whereas now they're collectibles for anybody.
Right, and...
I've got 2 Glow Pops that I'm looking at. They wouldn't have made Glow toys for kids.
God, no.
No. So...
In fact, aren't they making Glow action figures out? It's supposed to be coming out sometime in the near future.
Yeah, they're similar to the reaction figures that Funko did. I think they're by Funk, not positive. But
want to get those. But no, the whole thing with the Funko Pop figures is and I have defended why I collect them is because it's the one toy line that basically covers almost everything.
Yeah, that's what I think the appeal of them is. So
yeah, I have a couple hundred Pops, but I am just looking straight ahead at my one bookcase, which is like 4 feet away from me, and it has all 7 of my Big Trouble in Little China Funko Pops. That's the Jack Burton, Gracie Law, the 3 Storms, and Lopan, and the variant Lopan Glow in the Dark. But on that same shelf, I have Robbie the Robot Pop, I have Cthulhu Pop, I have Nosferatu Pop, and I also have 3 Avengers Age of Ultron Pops on the same shelf, and a couple shelves below I have the Creature from the Black Lagoon, the Wolfman Dracula, the Mummy, and... No, I'm sorry, not the Mummy, the Phantom of the Opera, and Baymax from Big Hero 6.
Right.
Because they're making basically everything.
Right. No, yeah, they totally are,
Except for Indiana Jones, because you can only get them for a brief period of time at one convention, and that was it.
No, they're all at the Disney parks.
I hate that. I'm never going to get Indiana Jones because of that. Thanks, Funko. Thanks, Disney.
Yeah, it is a weird situation because it's just where we are with modern collectibles, I suppose. But yeah, you would think... I know the movie didn't do well when it came out, but you would think that... this would have had action figures since it came out. Hell, they tried making Conan action. I think they eventually did make Conan action figures, but famously, Masters Universe was the result of them trying to make Conan action figures and then deciding that the movie could not be marketed for kids.
Yeah, I think the Conan action figures actually ended up being for Conan the Adventurer cartoon series.
Right.
Just as an aside, I used to love the theme song for that cartoon show. But I digress. I guess we should probably wrap up this topic, and that leaves us with the ratings. Who goes first?
I'll go first. So this is another case of if we were using half stars, but we're not. So officially, I'm giving it 3 stars. I would probably give it 3.5. I don't like it enough to give it 4. I have a weird thing with this movie. I don't hate it. I don't dislike it. I think it's a great idea, and I like most of the characters, most of the character performances, a lot of the look. But something about the movie just never clicks for me. I don't love it, and don't feel strongly enough about it to give it 4 stars. Now, if you say to me, hey, do you want to watch Big Trouble in Little China? I'm going to say yes. It's never going to be like I compared it to Buckaroo Banzai, where I think that's a great idea and it just doesn't pan out. But Buckaroo Banzai I will watch as I watched it for the completion sake of it's a movie I always wanted to see. And then I watched it for my requisite, I'll give it a second chance, because the movie itself I didn't find to be that good. And I don't know if I'll ever watch that again. Like, I watch Big Trouble regularly. It's one of the movies we put on at work all the time. There's something about it that never quite clicks for me. I've said before on the show, I'm not really a fan of John Carpenter, and that might just be it. There just might be something about his films that doesn't work for me.
Can I venture a guess?
Sure.
Is it that this movie has a veneer of artificiality?
No, I wouldn't have never even thought of that. I just the stuff that's funny is funny, but nothing makes me belly laugh. Everything makes me chuckle. The action's good, but I don't think it doesn't blow me away. Like, everything about the film is stuff I like to a degree that I go, oh yeah, that's good, but not to a degree where it makes me go, oh wow, that was amazing. It's just my reaction to the film. It's not even, I was going to say it's very lukewarm, but that's not even accurate. It's just, I like it, but I like it a little bit more than it's just okay. Like I said, I enjoy it. If you ever say you want to watch it, I'll probably watch it. I watch it all the time. I've in the process of preparing for this episode, I actually had the thought, how do I not own a Jack Burton t-shirt? And I found one on Amazon, and we'll probably be ordering it. So like, I'm not opposed to buying merch for the movie, but it's a movie I like. It's definitely not a movie I love, and I would probably go 4 stars if I liked it a little bit more. But and we're not doing half stars, so I'm stuck with a 3.
Oh gosh, the funny thing about this is when you and I rewatched the movie preparing for this, I kept laughing throughout the entire thing.
I find it funny. I don't find it funny enough that it makes me laugh. So, if that makes any sense.
I can't help it. Some of the lines, some of the mannerisms. I mean, I have been living with this movie in my head for, 31 years now?
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving it a 5 star. I don't think it's the greatest movie. I don't think it's a perfect movie. It's got some flaws. But, man, is this ever an entertaining film. The thing is, this is ranked in my top 20. I think it's like number 11 or 12 in my top 20 favorite movies on Flickchart, which automatically gives it a 5-star rating on Flickchart. So I'm just going with that because this isn't me giving it a 5-star for quality. This is me giving it a 5-star because I genuinely love this movie.
Well, no, we don't rank by quality here. We rank by how much we enjoyed it.
In the comparison to Buckaroo Banzai, I am going to tell you what the difference is between these two movies.
One has like sound design and pacing and doesn't feel like it was filmed with a tin can in a back alley, and the other one's Buckaroo Banzai. So.
Well, okay, that's one way to say it. What I was going to say is that Buckaroo Banzai, as you said, has incredible ideas. It's got a lot of really a lot going for it. Great game cast, but the problem is that the film meanders.
Oh, it definitely does.
And it gets dull, and there are parts where I just check out mentally while watching it. Whereas with Big Trouble, I am thoroughly entertained every time I watch this movie.
See, I have checked out several times around the middle part of the movie, several times. And that doesn't, Big Trouble, and that doesn't make me turn it off. But like, I'm like, it always is like, oh wait, are they doing the final battle yet? Okay, I can. It's a film where I always end up like doing something else while it's on, like where I'm only half paying attention to.
To be fair, to be honest, that probably happens to me about half the time that I rewatch the movie. But whenever I pay attention to it, I am entertained throughout the thing.
I think if I can interject, I think what it honestly might be is exactly what you said. I didn't have it in my head for 30 years and grow up with it. And so I'm not looking at it with any eye or air of nostalgia. I'm just looking at it for what it is. And what it is something that entertains me, but not something that gets an emotional response out of me.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know how much of my affection and love of this movie is just pure nostalgia and how much of it is genuine. I think it is probably a mixture of both.
See, I think about
but
that.
I do genuinely love this movie.
I think about that with Ghostbusters and Back to the Future all the time, because they're both in my top 10, and I think about whether they're there simply for nostalgia reasons or not.
Ghostbusters is my number 3 favorite movie of all time, and I have watched it enough where, no, it's just generally still a really, really good movie. The thing with Back to the Future is a really good movie, but over time I've kind of, I don't want to say softened on it, but I started to kind of realize that I think a large part of the appeal of that movie was basically nostalgia. And I still appreciate it. I still like it, but I don't love it as much as I did when I was a kid. But Big Trouble is a movie that I loved when I was 11. I love it at 41. So, yeah, it definitely still got, say, 5-star rating for me. And, man, I really want a Jack Burton t-shirt now.
Well, they're like $15 on Amazon, so.
Oh, that's the American Amazon. I'd have to see what it is on the Canadian. And I guess that means this is the wrap-up for this week's episode of Derek and Matt Love Comics. If you want to send us an email, have any thoughts on Big Trouble in Little China, you can email us at derekandmattlovecomics@gmail.com. Find us on facebook.com/derekandmatt, on Twitter at Derek and Matt, on Instagram at Derek and Matt, now on YouTube at Derek and Matt Love Comics, and you can find the show on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Google Play, and TuneIn. Remember to subscribe and rate us on iTunes. And if you want to learn anything about the greatest comic book shop in the galaxy, you can do so at galacticgregs.com. Next week on Derek and Matt Love Comics. What is it?
I would like to quickly say that you're probably listening to this episode late, what with the technical problems we had and us not being able to record until Monday. You're probably not going to get this until Wednesday night or Thursday, so I apologize for that. And next week we are covering the next Hellboy storyline, Hellboy Wake the Devil. And because of NXT TakeOver and SummerSlam, you're probably going to get that episode slightly late too. So I had been aiming for Wednesday morning releases on all these shows. We're going to try for that for next week. I don't know if we're going to hit that this week. But I apologize for the lateness, but you will, 90% of the time, 99% of the time, you'll always get a show from us in the week. And thanks for being patient with us. But yes, Hellboy Wake the Devil, Part 2 of the Hellboy series is what we are covering next week.
This is going to be the first Hellboy story that I am going to read in my brand new Hellboy Omnibus Volume 1.
Me as well, although I do believe I've read this one before.
No, I've read it before because I have the old trade paperback, but I'm going to reread it in my new Omnibus, which I just got a couple of weeks ago. Music for this episode, Hero Theme and Adventure Meme by Kevin MacLeod, Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. Any final words, Matt?
It's all in the reflexes.
Just remember what old Jack Burton does when the earth quakes and the poison arrows fall from the sky and the pillars of heaven shake. Yeah, Jack Burton just looks that big old storm right square in the eye, and he says, "Give me your best shot, pal. I can take it."